thank you for joining us. My name is Ahmed Baba. For those who don't know, I'm a journalist here on Substack, and I'm thrilled to be joined by the one and only Rick Wilson, co-founder of the Lincoln Project, Lincoln Square Media. What is up, man? It's great to finally talk to you after, engaging all
I
these
know
years.
we've known each other online for a while, but it's great being with you too. Look, I mean, what's up is that we're in a brave new world as of today, right now we've seen Iran this evening start to punch back a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
which you know there was always going to be a time where they get to cast their vote too in
Yep.
this fight. Um, and it's fascinating to see that they may be constraining some of their worst impulses. We'll
Yep.
see. Um, but look, we've now decided we're gonna go back into the Gulf, which, as a former Republican, I can tell you, I remember this story. I've been to this rodeo twice now, and I don't know that it's going to end the way people think it's going to end.
Yeah,
It rarely does.
regime change wars never work well. I actually wanted to zero in on the first part of what you're talking about there, just this breaking news of the ballistic missiles attacking the Qatari base or the U.S. base in Qatar. You've
Right,
got
LED. Right,
and near Doha, and we're
right.
seeing that they telegraphed these attacks to Qatar beforehand. We're seeing that potentially, like you're saying, this could be an effort to de-escalate. They use the same number of missiles they're saying that the U.S. used against
Right.
the three sites. So they're trying to signal potentially we're doing a proportionate, measured response. Is that your read on this too? That you think they could be trying to give Trump an off ramp, or do you think this could be a misdirection?
Well, look, I think that this is somewhat similar to the time they attacked Israel recently with cruise missiles. Israel responded in kind. Then Iran responded back with a very short, limited attack, a handful of weapons. We may be in that. I don't know if I'd say I can read the Iranian regime's intentionality on this that closely, but it beats a lot of the other alternatives that they could have launched, especially against some fairly vulnerable U.S. bases. Al Udeid being the base in Qatar, Bahrain with the Fifth Fleet. There are a lot of, and of course, in Saudi Arabia, King Khalid Military City, and other places, Dhahran, all of which have meaningful American personnel footprints. So, and the heads up, as a courtesy heads up, I'll take it.
Yeah.
You know, and so if they're going to be rational actors in this part of this conflict, we should welcome that.
Yeah.
Whether Trump will take that is another matter.
And that's the question, right? Because if they're trying to present themselves as rational actors, it's honestly kind of insane that Iran would be trying to be the cooler head
Right.
in the room potentially here. But yeah, it really depends on what Trump does next, because he's over here posting about regime change, and this is something that he has said during the campaign he would never do. And just one point on that, on the
Right.
whole the whole influence campaign trying to nudge him towards this regime change war. I
Which has been
basically
very successful, by the way.
Yes, totally successful. And it's been fascinating to me because I really thought that they've been using kind of almost old school Lincoln Project, like get in his head via media tactics, like through Fox News. Like you have Netanyahu putting all of his officials
Yep.
on there, trying to play to his ego. And then meanwhile, new MAGA media is doing an alternate pressure campaign. And it
That's
seems
right.
Fox won right off the bat.
Oh, I have to tell you, the ability of Netanyahu to manipulate Donald Trump has proven to be peerless. I mean,
Yeah.
I think if you watch the way that Netanyahu has played him from every moment of this operation, with the the sucking up, the sort of over the top praise, all these things, you end up with a sort of situation where you know that while the Israeli military operation was quite successful, their psychological warfare was even more so,
Mm-hmm.
because Trump likes four things, Ahmed. He likes praise and the spotlight.
Yep.
He likes money. He likes sex, and he likes women and men around him to be humiliated.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, he didn't want to be the beta on this. He wanted to be, he saw Netanyahu, and Netanyahu told him oh, I'm getting all this credit. I'm making so much. I've got so much power, Donald. Look at what I've been able to do. And Trump saw that and just burned up with jealousy, just couldn't handle it. And so, you end up in this situation where, Trump wants to drop bombs too. Trump wants to drop missiles too.
Mm-hmm.
Look, and I am not sympathetic to the Iranian regime. It's a monstrous, endless violation of human rights, and a danger to the country and the world, the region and the world. And no one, we should be limiting the number of other countries that decide they want nukes at this point. The club's big enough and unstable enough. But I will say this: um, they have certainly not profited from this adventure, and 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 I have to go back and look at what JCPOA actually accomplished for 5 years, keeping them from getting weapons.
Yes.
And I was a skeptic of JCPOA at the time. I fully admit it. I was like, I don't think it's strong enough. I don't think it's going to work, but it did. At the end of the day, it worked. And, so the reason we're back here now is that we stopped JCPOA. We went back into Iran because we talked ourselves in, well, he talked himself into in 2015 or 2017, the conclusion that, oh, it's got Obama's name on it, it must be weak.
Exactly. And I'm going to double down on that note in a second, but everybody commenting, we see you. I saw Lev Parnas in here. I see some followers. Yeah, he was in there earlier. I see Bertilla, she was an old subscriber of mine from way back in the day. Hit that like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe. All right? Subscribe to Rick Wilson. The button's right at the top. Free subscriber, paid subscriber, whatever you can. We're out here working. So yes, Rick, that's spot on, because if you look at the chart, literally, of the enriched uranium, you could see it was down in the 3% range. It was just, and then you see the moment it gets off, they started ramping up again, and now we're back to pre JCPOA enrichment numbers, back up to the 60%.
Correct.
And it just showcases that Trump, once again, the same tactic he uses all the time, manufacturing crisis. This one was a long game, manufactured crisis, but he's trying to come in and allegedly save the world from something that he caused, because Iran was cooperating.
It really, again, it strikes me as this moment where we had options with the global community. No one wanted Iran to get an expanded nuclear weapons program. We all decided as a global enterprise, for once, that we were going to all do this JCPOA idea, and that the world could potentially end up being a safer place.
Yeah.
Trump's ego kept him so unconstrained that he had to do what he wanted to do. And now, you look at this world we're in, where I don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. No, I don't. I can't think of anybody outside of the Iranian regime that wants Iran to have a nuclear weapon. But we didn't have to do it this way.
Exactly.
And I have some concerns about how we did it as well, in the sort of stupid partisanship of the Trump administration of, oh no, we're not going to tell any Democrats we're doing it. We're only going to tell our fellow Republicans, which, it's dumb. I wouldn't say it's surprising, Ahmed, but it's dumb. And it's against the sort of general rules of how we run, or how we claim that we govern ourselves.
Yeah, spot on, Rick. And also, you're right. No one does want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. State sponsor of terrorism, like just a horrible
bad guy,
right? Yeah, bad people, right? Like not the Iranian people, but the regime itself.
Right. No, yeah, right.
And also the on that note of actually accomplishing this, I was seeing Intel reports, New York Times report on as well, that they actually hadn't made a decision to begin building a nuclear weapon, and that there was a calculation among U.S. Intel that this attack could potentially push them towards that decision. So you might you might have a self-fulfilling prophecy there. And then not only that, it seems from what we can tell that they may have room. No one's confirming in the Trump admin, and New York Times is reporting they maybe removed the entire stockpile, the 900 pounds of the 60% enriched uranium, which they could get to 90%. I know we damaged centrifuges.
But, this is, Ahmed, this is, and I've had this conversation about 10 times with various people. Nuclear weapons, the weapon itself, the gadget, the bomb, the device, it's not hard to build.
Yeah.
The difficulty is getting the fissile material for it.
Mhm.
So if they took that 60% and ran with it, and it didn't get destroyed at Fordo, which apparently it did not, um, we still have a problem. They can reconstitute this effort if they need to or want to, and I wonder that this doesn't make them want to more.
Yeah.
There's an odd lesson from Ukraine where in 1991 and 92, Ukraine had a large number of Soviet-era Russian nuclear weapons in Ukraine because it was one of the SSRs. They made a permanent peace treaty with Russia to get rid of those nuclear weapons. Well, that peace treaty has not held up very well over the last 25 years
Mhm.
because Russia was a bad actor. So, I mean, imagine a world where Ukraine still had its nuclear weapons from the before times. That's the same thing other nations are thinking now, like, oh shit,
Yep.
maybe we should. So I think this could end up escalating proliferation in a way that we're not going to be happy about.
You're spot on. And that Ukraine example you gave reminds me of Libya, right? Gaddafi.
Yep.
There's that lesson where Putin apparently really took the Gaddafi situation seriously. And
Yeah.
once you denuclearize, suddenly you're left defenseless. Suddenly you're having more U.S. intervention. Suddenly you're being killed by your own people. And I think if I'm Iran right now, Iran is incredibly weak. Like, of course, this is the whole reason why Israel attacked. They're not imminently about to build a nuke within weeks. They see Iran, the proxies are weakened, Hezbollah's weakened. Hezbollah's been pretty much dead. The leadership decimated.
I mean that whole aspect. And look, that's one of the things about Iran is, ironically, this year, Iran's proxies around the Gulf and around the world were significantly weakened. Iran's position of strength in being able to manipulate world events had been significantly weakened. We could have been in a much better position in a lot of ways if we had let that sort of strike against them earlier in the year, partly because their own proxy forces were very much compromised by the post October 7th attacks on Hamas and Hezbollah. But now we've got I think if there's not regime change soon, I think the Iran we end up dealing with after this will be much more punitive and pissed off. And unfortunately, again, they get a vote now.
Exactly. And on that note, like, there's also a eroded trust from Trump and the U.S. because not only you have the guy who ripped up the original JCPOA, now he comes and bombs your enrichment centrifuges, and then he now wants another deal. If you're Iran, are you just going to say, I'm just going to nuclearize and defend myself there because I have a better shot? And that's what the worry is.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
that to me is like the real question mark here of do we have a worse outcome in the end of the day, that the short term American intervention in this ends up with a worse outcome, and there is a real world, I think, in which that is a possibility.
Yeah, Rick. So you think potentially, even if this initial strike could be de-escalatory from Iran, and if you think maybe they could be thinking, okay, now we got to prep for long game, and you think they might try to potentially build towards a nuke in a more intentional fashion than before? Because
look, I think they've always wanted a countervailing power against Israel in the region, but remember, they also wanted to have a countervailing power against Saudi Arabia, and against other Gulf states that were not in their pocket or not in their sphere. So, they would probably look at this and say, yeah, the nuke thing that was actually the best idea, guys.
That would be the worst outcome. And you think Strait of Hormuz, I know the Iranian parliament said they voted on it. Do you think that potentially will still happen, or you think now this strike might signal that they won't end up?
I think I've been reading a little bit today about there are some arguments to be made that doing the straits actually hurts Iran's ability to stay in business, essentially, because it will end up costing them their foreign energy revenue, what they can still glean from China, Russia, and parts of Europe.
Yeah.
So this may be, if they don't block the straits and we continue with this, I mean, I say this relatively more or less conciliatory positioning we're in right now, maybe. It's really hard to make the call though, because again,
Yeah.
I'm not going to claim to have any terrifically deep insight into Iranian leadership thinking the day after they've gotten whacked.
Of course, yeah. And also, it seems that I saw a chart from Stephen Radner from Morning Joe that apparently 38% of the oil goes to China. So
Yeah,
it would actually hurt China as well, which
right.
so I don't think they would want to do that right now because they don't really want, you wouldn't want to, your only remaining potential
Right.
partners.
Their most significant ally,
Yeah.
in the world right now is China. Given that Russia's not in a position, I think, to offer them a lot of I mean, they've been helping Russia more than the other way around. They've
Yeah.
been giving Russia drones and technology and whatnot that has enabled Russia to continue to wage this war against Ukraine. So I my
Yeah.
big picture thinking is that it's still not a net win for Iran if they end up saying to China and Russia, "Hey guys, basically sorry, but we're so angry we're gonna be vindictive about it. We're not gonna whatever."
Yeah, of
So,
course. And on that note, just the leadership around him. What's your take on the whole? He's basically not listening to Pete Hegseth. He's not really consulting with Tulsi Gabbard. Like, there's a whole fraying in his admin. Do you think that
oh
they're going to
yeah,
last? Do you think
oh
they'll?
look, this administration is broken
Yeah.
at a rather profound level. This is not There's not a State Department. He's barely talking to Marco.
Hmm.
Um, he had Hegseth and Rubio and Vance behind him as blame sponges the other
Yep.
night, rather than having them behind him as people who were central figures in this plan. So I don't think his administration's running particularly well today. And I don't think it can at this point. I don't think that there is a group of people inside who have the undivided belief in how America should be handling this. He's got
Yeah.
some people who are very much in this sort of isolationist, Bannonite, uh, we'll call it anti-neocon, because that's what they would call it, position. But I don't know if you've got a lot of people who are professionally qualified to handle a really super complicated diplomatic and military challenge like this. I
Yeah.
mean, there are no people from either the Bush world or the Obama world or any other sort of space around him that have had the experience and gone through the rodeo on things like a complicated long military engagement. Because if this starts, I'm sorry to tell my friends, as a Republican, I've been through this twice. One time it worked out okay because George Herbert Walker Bush and Colin Powell set very strict limits on what we would do in Iraq,
Hmm.
and we got out. And I've said this before. I was a young guy. I was working for Cheney at the time. I was a young guy, and I was like, "Why aren't we going all the way? We should finish the job." But that's because I was a young dumbass who didn't understand that this world does not work in the simple, straight line, easy. Oh, it's all going to be fine if we just bomb our way out of the problem, because it doesn't
Yeah.
work that way.
And
And
unfortunately,
yeah,
Trump has that. Trump is he's not a long-term thinker,
not at
right?
all.
He's trying to win the day. He doesn't have true, like, he's not, John Bolton's not there anymore. I mean, maybe we could say thank God on the Iran front, but like he doesn't have military strategists or people who think about this issue consistently
That's
for
right.
decades that have really strong feelings about it, like you've outlined. And it's just about winning the day, winning the news cycle. And honestly, I wonder how much of this and some of this, I wonder if he would even want to end if the military parade was a big success or if no kings didn't happen. I feel like he had an ego bruise
Oh
and
yes,
he had to
yeah. Like
like,
he came into
he
this
had
week.
to.
he came into this week with his feelings hurt, and he was convinced that he was so angry with Hegseth in the beginning of the week, from what I was hearing out of DC, that, I'm sure Pete Hegseth said, whatever you want, Mr. President, anything up to including the big one. I just feel like he was so hurt that people didn't respond to his birthday parade in the way he thought they would respond.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. Also, it looks like we've hit over 1,000 viewers on this. What's up, everybody? We see you in the comments. Hit subscribe, that button at the top. If you are watching, Rick is over here dropping gems, hearing all this great insight from you. I don't know how much time do you have, by the way. I just want to clock
I've
that
got
for you.
until about 35 after.
Oh, perfect. All right, just wanted to make sure, because you've really been giving real measured takes on this. You've been pretty steadfast in your analysis. You haven't, I've seen some people fear mongering, but you've been really on the kind of straightforward analysis on this. What do you think this does go next? Do you think that after this initial attack, does it depend more on what Iran does next, or
yeah,
Donald?
I think if Iran says, okay, we've fired off our demonstration shot, there used to be a thing when naval ships used to fight. If a ship was really outgunned by its enemy, there was no dishonor in firing one round of one cannon away from the other ship and saying we've satisfied our honor in this case.
Yeah.
Iran may say, okay, we've satisfied our honor, we're done for now, and slink back into whatever posture it's going to slink back into. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that Iran's never going to be a problem again, but it does mean that the escalation clock, which, by the way, Trump should want that.
Yes.
Trump should want that. He should want this thing to calm down. And we'll see if his ego will let it calm down, but he should want to not feel like the world is on tenterhooks and that we're about to enter into a global conflagration, or that we're about to enter into another open-ended Middle Eastern adventure.
Yeah, I mean, you would think, and maybe a younger, more, less. He really lost his mind after January 6th, and obviously more so this past summer after the assassination attempt. Maybe a different version of him maybe would have approached this with a different head. But I honestly wonder, just when it comes to, I saw someone in the comments just post about how Trump's trying to obviously consolidate power, increase his power. Do you think there's a risk, because he has this addiction to declaring false emergencies, that he might pursue this in order to actually achieve and get more legal basis for the authoritarian measures he's doing here at home?
I don't think that's out of the question, Ahmed. I don't think that's beyond him. Let's put it that way. I don't think that we live in a world where he doesn't think about those things in some capacity. And that is, I think that is a tremendously dangerous place for us to be. But I also think we have to be real that Donald Trump cares about himself and nothing else. And if it's not in those four things he likes, his behavior is much less predictable and manageable.
And I think what's been hopeful to me is some of the MAGA influencers and some of the MAGA people who have fully broken, like Dave Smith, I saw fully broke.
Yeah.
And and Candace Owens, who I think's been on a long pivot because she senses the winds are against MAGA. So
I
she's
think
been
that's
kind of
right.
pivoting for a long time now. But
and you also have Alex Jones and Steve Bannon and a lot of these other guys who, while they may not be, look, they're not swinging over to the Democrats, but they're also not in the world where it's like we can never even say a word about what Donald Trump's decisions are. I think they're starting to feel a little more latitude to talk about what he's doing than they did before. I don't know that that's going to do a lot of good, but I think that in the elite MAGA influencer space, particularly, it is changing. There's a way to divide them in that space. Now, among the MAGA base, we flipped over 100% from no, don't get involved in the Iraq-Israel conflict to 80% now saying this is the most brilliant war ever. Let's go.
It's insane.
I know, right?
Seeing just like the direct, like there's like the Juanita Broderick I saw, like she had almost exact opposite takes. It's just, Like if you're not beating the cult allegations, guys. Like if you want to actually,
Right.
don't want to be called a
If you
cult,
don't want to think you're in a cult, try not acting like you're in a cult.
yeah, don't be going dear leader mode on us mid potential war. Like that's not what you want to hear. But it's been fascinating just seeing just the top part, because really what that does is provide a permission structure. Because in cults generally, and just in movements like this, you need to start seeing some people speaking out first. Obviously, there'll be some denial, but having Tucker Carlson, especially that Ted Cruz interview, was really one of the most effective. First off, we need actual journalists to do that to Republicans.
You know what, Ahmed, that is such a great point, because I would like to see actual journalists go into these discussions with a lot of these Republican members of the House and Senate and have conversations like that. And look, I'm not a Tucker fanboy, and Tucker and I don't have a mutual admiration society, to put it mildly. But I have to say, he went into that, even though there was some weird anti-Semitic garbage in that interview. But he went into that interview with a lot of challenges to Ted Cruz and frankly to the Republican orthodoxy around Israel and the Middle East and Trump's role there. That was, I mean, he at least planned ahead. The guy at least went to school on what he was going to talk about, which I thought was really impressive in a way, because too many of these people are just like, whatever Trump says goes. I'm good with that.
Exactly. And Ted Cruz didn't expect it. That was one of the reasons why it worked. No. He didn't go in there prepping. If you go into an adversarial interview, you might look up the population of Iran before you walk in there and get shellacked. But I just think, like, you're right. Because like Tucker, I mean, this shows there's still, some kind of within the underneath the shell of pro-Russia propaganda and disinfo and grift. There's like a journalist hidden in there deep down that like wants to come out. But like, we need more of that, because you're right. Because and even if it was like liberal journalists, I don't see them asking those basic questions, because that's what really, really kind of hit it hard, was when Ted Cruz can answer basic stuff like the population number, or okay, you're citing this Bible verse as the basis for your support for Israel. Where's that verse? Like those kind of questions show that underneath all the bluster, there's really just a shallow understanding of really any of this. And that was why it was so effective.
And it's a shallow understanding, but it's also one that the MAGA base has been so, like, there are three big normative forces for MAGA: Fox News, Twitter, and Facebook. Mm-hmm. And for a long time, they've lived in a world where if you said, I'm owning the libs by whatever I'm saying, it was okay. That was what people wanted. They're like, okay, good. He's owning the libs. He can do whatever he wants. I'm not going to demand any accuracy. I'm not going to demand any consistency. I'm not going to demand any facts. I just want to piss off liberals. And to a large degree, I don't think that works anymore. No. I don't think if you're talking about a massive military intervention in the Middle East, that you're in the same world where they can just say, okay, we're owning the libs.
No,
I just don't think it's the same level of effectiveness.
Getting drafted to own the libs, getting yourself drafted.
Oh yeah, sending your kids to Iran to own the libs.
To own the libs.
As a friend of mine, as a former general today, said to me, he goes, I want you to imagine that, to use my grandson's video game language, Iraq was the training level in the beginning of the video game compared to Iran.
Yeah.
It will be so much worse. It will be so much more crazy. It will be so much more deadly. And I'm like, that's not the best analogy for Americans, or that's the best analogy for Americans to think about this as. This is a country that's much more industrialized, sophisticated, educated, weaponized than Iraq was. Mm-hmm. Iraq had been bled dry by Saddam for, decades and decades. Iran's a hard target. And if we don't think of it that way, and we go in there blindly, I think there's nothing but bad outcomes.
Yeah. And I think Iran should take or Trump should take the off ramp. And hopefully Iran would follow if Trump did do that. Because the thing is, he should not be taking military advice from Netanyahu, who has overexerted himself and stretched himself so far that he's turned the globe against him in a lot of ways.
Right.
And I don't think, for some reason deep down, Trump still wants to be loved. So I'm sure he'll be watching some of these poll numbers that come out on this.
Yeah, and
but
so far they're not great.
they are not great. So I mean, we're going to see what he does next. But I really just, I really hope we see more of that, because I'm interested as this spin comes out now, because this potential next phase is if Iran de-escalates and then they try to claim victory, will Tucker Carlson, will these other people come back around and be like, oh, that strike was a good strike, And if they don't, that continues that permission structure. And also the Musk rift was another piece that was important. Like all these fractures being emphasized here and around the big, beautiful bill, those fractures, everywhere you look, there's fractures in this coalition. And I just think this Iran issue is just another example of this big fraying that could be taken advantage of in the midterms by Dems.
I think that's absolutely right. And I do think the more you look at how the elite again, set the base aside, because the base is a very different critter. Mm-hmm. But if you look at these elite MAGA influencer types and how difficult it has been for them to reset in the course of this entire moment between Israel and Iran, they've had a really difficult time trying to message their way out of this. They've had a difficult time trying to keep their coalition intact. You do have enough Republicans now who are saying things that they would have never said before. When you've got Marjorie Taylor Greene today basically turning on Donald Trump,
I know.
I mean, that's an absolutely remarkable experience to see her. Like, I voted for no war and no nuclear war and this and that, and now Donald's betraying us. That's really striking.
Yeah, it's striking and it's important. And again, like one thing I think people need to keep in mind during this, these people don't have principles, right? So it's not that they have some deep anti-war sentiment, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't doing this from the kindness of her heart, right? No. These are people who are reading the winds. These are people who are thinking it's in their personal political interest to make this turn. I think Tucker, some of these others, when they make these splits, they're betting on Trump fail in some ways. And I think they're laying the groundwork for a post-Trump era whenever I see these splits happen. And
that's why that's one of the reasons that J.D. Vance internally inside Trump world was opposed to the strike.
Yep.
Because he believes, from what I was told over the weekend by some folks around the Trump universe inside the White House spectrum, that Vance believes that if we do this, then and we don't keep it going, Trump looks weak. Mm-hmm. But if we also do it, it commits us to another forever war in the Persian Gulf or in the Middle East, and it's a bad outcome.
Yep.
So, I mean, I do think MAGA is trapped in its own contradictions in a lot of ways, and really has a hard time with reality, because they would like Trump's description of things to be reality, but it's just not.
Exactly.
His descriptions of the world do not meet up with reality, and unfortunately for MAGA, he is going to still be for a very long time now the most powerful normative force. Maybe not forever, but for the moment, he is still, the definitional leader of the party.
Yep, exactly. And that's for the moment, because I think you're right to point out Vance as well, because Vance sees himself as the next president. So he doesn't want himself to have this in the future. So it's definitely important to watch what these people are doing and saying, and because all of these people, they're a coalition of grifters, and they're only aligned as long as their self-interests are aligned. And the moment that misaligns, that's when we see the things separate. So those are all the things we're going to be watching here. I see we're hitting your time, Rick.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Great
for joining
me today, man. Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me. And folks, we'll see you around.
Yeah, see you. Subscribe. Follow everybody, Rick. Great to see you, man.
Thanks, Ahmed. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you then. Bye.